Yeah, very strange. Definitely going to take some getting used to. Still not really sold on the in-season tournament, but we'll see. Maybe it'll be fun to watch. Um, Now I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah.
What do you have highlighted here? It's a lot for people to go through, obviously, and they can check out your story that uh, will obviously be highlighting some of these similar um, highlights, I suppose, for lack of a
Yeah.
better, more elegant phrase there.
Yeah.
Well, what do you got?
Well, the first thing that jumps out is that the first month of the season isn't easy. They started out at home against Detroit, but then they immediately go on the road. And I think 12 of the first 17 are on the road. So
Similar
after
to
that,
last year, wasn't it like the same thing last year? Didn't they have
actually
to play
last
really
year,
hard, or was it the
last
other way
year
around?
it was flipped a bit. Like the first few weeks were basically all at home, and then they went on the road for
Yeah. Okay.
a bunch. But here, like now, it's like from the start, they're gonna be on the road for pretty much
Mhm.
most of the first month of the year. So they'll be tested early. Don't I could see Heat Twitter panicking, when they start 9-8 or 8-9 or something like that. I'm not putting bad juju out there. I'm just saying, like, prepare. The schedule isn't easy, and that matters, right? And not only is it because it's on the road, 8 of those 12 road games come against teams that were in the playoffs last year. So there's Milwaukee, there's Boston,
Yeah. At one point
there's a game
they
against
got nine
Memphis.
of 10 basically in November. They're on the road for pretty much all of November, the middle part
Yeah,
of November. 9 of 10 on the road at one point
yeah,
at Memphis, at New York, at Brooklyn. Who knows what
yeah.
Brooklyn's going to look like at Atlanta? Not the
Cleveland, yeah.
toughest teams, but
It's not easy
any
though. It's not
road
like
game against a team
gimmies.
that made the
Yeah,
playoffs last year. Yeah,
yeah,
at
yeah.
Chicago, which nearly knocked Miami out of the
Right.
playoffs last year.
Yeah, I was gonna
Gave them
say
a
the four.
tougher test than anyone other than Denver, essentially.
Yeah, for real. I mean, 8 of the 12 of those 12 road games come against teams that made the playoffs. The four that don't come against non-playoff teams are San Antonio, which is probably gonna be better this year, right?
Yeah, they Victor
Uh,
Wembanyama.
Charlotte, with if Lamelo's healthy, they'll probably be a
Who
little bit
knows?
better as
Yeah.
well. And then two in Chicago, which Chicago was pretty much the same, a little worse than
Like I
Miami last year
said,
in the
they
regular
gave
season. Like
Miami
they
a
were right
tougher
there.
test than
They're a
anyone
good
in the
team. Yeah,
playoffs other than Denver.
yeah.
In
So there's
my
not
opinion, the
really.
third best team in the league, if you ask me.
There you go. There you go. Chicago was like kicking itself last playoffs to see that could have been us. We could have been in the finals against Denver. So yeah, other than that, like that first game against Detroit, um, even the home games, like the home games in that first month are Detroit, Brooklyn, Washington, which I guess is a gimme, David. I don't know. I don't
Yeah,
want to offend
they're
you.
bad. They're bad.
The Lakers and Brooklyn. Those are the home games. Like that first month is not going to. There
No,
aren't
not
a
easy.
lot of cupcakes. So that's the first thing that jumped
Gotta
out.
win game one. Gotta beat Detroit on
I mean,
opening
if they lose to Detroit, we could be looking at a 1-10 start. I don't know. I'm kidding, but no, it's going to be a test early on. We'll see if they have Dame to kind of help them. We'll
Yeah.
see. So it'll be determined. Um, Another thing that jumps out selfishly when I look at the
I was gonna
schedule.
say this is not a good beat writer travel schedule. A 5 game road trip around Thanksgiving, a 5 game road trip around
Yes.
New Year's.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. They play on a lot of holidays.
After,
Which,
yes, they play on Christmas and then they go on the road
yeah,
for 5 days, which will have you on the road through Christmas Eve. They play the Clippers on New Year's Day in LA.
yeah.
And
And
then
the
as a,
Rose Bowl's that day, so that'll be a fun time as
oh,
well.
true, I didn't even think about that. You got the
Um,
Rose Bowl. I guess you
yeah.
can't. You're gonna be busy.
I'll be covering a game that day, but it'll be
Well,
very
when's the
full.
Rose Bowl? The Rose Bowl is during the day.
Isn't it January 1st?
Yeah, but it's during the day, I think, right?
I
Or
can't.
is it at night?
It's
It
too
might be at
much.
night, yeah.
With LA traffic, I can't risk it. Um,
I think
I
the
think
Outback Bowl or whatever they call it now is the first one of the day that day.
I was there for the Rose Bowl last year as well. I remember
Oh,
seeing
really?
OJ McDuffie in the elevator of my hotel. 'Cause I think Penn State played in the Rose Bowl last year.
Oh,
But
okay.
anyway, but
Yeah,
they play a lot of holidays.
yeah.
Obviously Christmas. So yes, they're home on Christmas, but they play at 8 o'clock against Philly. They play on. They don't play on Thanksgiving, but they're on a
But
road
you're
trip
on the
around
road. Yeah.
Thanksgiving.
They play the day
Um,
before Thanksgiving in Cleveland, the day after Thanksgiving in New York.
yes, they play on New Year's Day, like you mentioned. They play on Martin Luther King Jr. Day. They play on Valentine's Day.
Does
They play
everyone
on
play Martin Luther
Easter.
King Day now? Is that a new? I feel like they did
Is
that a
it?
couple years ago.
It's a good question.
A lot of the league plays. At least a lot of the league plays.
It's a holiday where the league tries to really put together some showcase games, and they play in the afternoon and early on. So
which game
they
is
use
that? I don't even know what day is Martin
that's
Luther
I
King Day?
think it's the one against Brooklyn. They play in Brooklyn. Yeah, so and then they play on Valentine's Day in Philly. They play on Easter in DC on March 31st.
Yeah, Brooklyn.
They also play on Super Bowl Sunday.
Brutal.
It's like this is a rough schedule.
Yeah, you're gonna miss the Dolphins Super Bowl.
I don't know what we're gonna do. How are we gonna cover all that? We're gonna need you back, David. The Heat they play at home against the Celtics at 2 p.m. It's a big game. 2 p.m. on ABC on Super Bowl Sunday. So you can go to the game, catch the Heat Celtics, then get out and watch the Dolphins play in the Super Bowl on 6:30.
Yeah.
Great sports day in South Florida. So I mean, those are two of the main things that stick out. I guess a couple other tidbits. First game against Portland.
They should show the Super Bowl on the big screen at Kaseya Center if the Dolphins.
Well, the game will be over because the game's at 2 p.m.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I'm just saying
after
keep the people in there.
Just stay there.
Like a watch party.
A good idea.
Pitch that for me. Yeah,
I'll do that. I'll let you know what they say. The first game against Portland is after the trade deadline, which is funny because it's probably the best possible chance that the team on Dame on the roster.
Yeah.
So that's one thing that stuck out. It's a game.
How about this? They will not play against Damian Lillard this year. I feel very confident about that.
The fact that it's after the trade deadline.
They will not play against him. I still feel like they'll be on the team. They definitely won't play against him this year.
I still think it'll happen before the season, but this gives them even better chance probably that trade getting done. If it has to take into the season, their first game against Portland
that week.
I don't think the date of the trade has been out. It's not out yet, but it's usually like February 9, February 10, so and the first Portland game is February 27 on TNT. The only reason the national televised Heat Blazers, I can't think of one, but I think you can probably guess.
Yeah.
Another thing that sticks out, they have 16 national TV appearances, not including the ones on NBA TV. Mm-hmm. That's pretty high compared to prior years. Last season it was 11 when they released the schedule, and then the year before that it was 10. So 16. It helps that Heat made the finals, but I'm sure the fact that there's a chance that Damian Lillard could be on the Heat also bumped that number up a bit. And the last thing to kind of wrap this up, they start out with a lot on the road. 9 of the final 13 are at home. So it kind of evens out a bit throughout the year, obviously. So it's not selfishly, it's not a great schedule, but it's a schedule.
Yeah. As you said, the West Coast trip is that one around New Year's, which is honestly for Heat fans pretty good. A lot of people off work around that time. Some late nights you can stay up and watch the Heat, not have to worry about getting up in the morning. Longest road trip of the year, 6 games in the middle of February. They play on Valentine's Day. Not good for Anthony's marriage.
Not good, man. I'm not
at Philly on Valentine's Day.
that 6-game trip is really, it's 6 straight road games, but the All-Star break is in the middle there.
Oh, right.
So I don't know if you want to go. But so the longest trip technically
they have a couple of 5
really
games.
Is 5 games. I think there's 2 5-game trips. Yeah. There's not really they've had 6-game trips in the past, and they've had 5 or 6 game homestands in the past. I think their longest homestand this year is 4, which was kind of crazy. It doesn't seem that long.
I'm looking at it now. Yeah, it doesn't look like there's even a 5.
They have a bunch of, I think they have 4 4-game homestands.
Mm-hmm. And they have a 7 and 8 at one point, or 6 and 7 at one point. A couple of those.
Yeah. They have a couple of stretches where they play a lot of home games. Obviously, there's more of those. I don't have the exact number right now, but there's more of those series this year where they play.
Yeah, the same team I noticed that too. Chicago back-to-back nights, or 2 nights,
Charlotte,
2 or 3 nights at home.
Yeah.
Home and Indiana. That's pretty interesting, I think.
Toronto to end the season on April 12 and April 14 at home. They play both Raptors games, in Miami. Come the final 2 games of the year.
The last 2 games of the year, yeah.
Yeah. So some kind of interesting things to go with the schedule, but I mean that's pretty much it.
Should we just talk about the Christmas game, I guess, before we move on to other topics? Obviously, everyone likes Christmas. NBA. Heat were not on Christmas last year. This year, Philadelphia. Night game, get that primetime slot. Should be fun, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, I know not the most fun to cover an NBA game on Christmas, but fun fun to watch it. And
Yeah.
at least it's 8 o'clock. You get your whole Christmas day
I was gonna say I'd rather be 8 o'clock than like
than
2
the noon
or
game.
something.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Because I don't have to be at the again, this is nobody cares about this, but you don't have to be at the arena. It's like 5, so it gives me most of Christmas
Yeah,
to spend with
exactly.
family.
Christmas Eve is the night. Christmas Day for most people.
Yeah.
It's the morning, right?
Yeah. Will James Harden play in that game? That's a question, right?
What team will James Harden be on by then?
Yeah,
The Heat?
exactly. Exactly. I mean that should be Heat Sixers
Portland?
is always Heat Sixers maybe. Heat Sixers is always Heat hope not. I'm guessing,
Yeah.
right? The Heat hope it's not.
Well,
Portland.
unless they can swing a 3-team something, right?
Sure. But
I don't think
another guard
do that. Yeah.
Yeah, and why would Portland want Harden? They don't want Hero, or they want Harden. But yeah, I mean, Philly's always a fun game. Embiid most likely will still be on the Sixers. There's a history there, right? The Sixers have a new coach, Nick Nurse. Is it the sexiest Christmas matchup like that day? Probably not, but it's a good game. I don't. It's the Heat should be on like
right. Yeah,
if they weren't on Christmas, it would have been kind of.
I mean, I don't know this offhand, but I have to assume every team that was in the finals the year before has pretty much always been on Christmas.
Yeah.
Were the Heat on Christmas the year after they went to the finals?
They played the Pelicans at home that year in 2021.
Right.
They weren't.
Yep. It was like opening week of the season, right? It was.
I think it was the second game of the year.
Yeah.
It was that weird, the COVID altered schedule, but
yep.
It was insulting last year for them to not be like they were one of the. I think they were the only ones that made the conference finals and that didn't play on Christmas. So
this was a big hot topic last year. Was like how are they not playing on Christmas?
How are they not playing? Exactly.
And
I think
Anthony was quietly like, yes.
Yes, I'm so happy. I think Philly got their spot last year, actually, or definitely New York played, and I think Philly got a Christmas Day game last year, even though the Heat eliminated them in the second round. So yeah, it was expected the Heat to get a Christmas Day game this year. It was just a matter of like when it was going to be and who it was going to be against. So 8 p.m. against the Sixers, fun matchup.
Yeah, Dolphins played on Christmas last year, so I know it. That's not like it doesn't matter, but you have to wonder how like if some of that was taken. I don't know what schedule would have come out first, but yeah. So I mean, he get the reward there, getting the spotlight. Jimmy Butler gets that Christmas spotlight. Hopefully he's healthy. That's kind of the time of year when Jimmy tends to miss games. I feel like that December stretch, right?
Yeah.
So, but if he's out there and Embiid's out there, that's and especially if Damian Lillard's also out there, it's like you said, maybe not as sexy as LeBron or Steph, but it's those are a lot of stars to put on Christmas Day. Those are 3 of the 15 biggest, 20 biggest stars in the league, something like that.
Not even including Bam in there. If you include Bam, it's like
Bam's really good. I don't know.
4 of the top 25, maybe. Guys, right? Or like maybe 4 of the top 25 players.
Mm-hmm. And Harden too, yeah.
And Harden, yeah. So yeah, I mean that's again, yeah, like you said, it's not the sexiest matchup, but it's a good matchup. It's a good game. 8 p.m. ESPN. The Heat get a Christmas Day game, so Heat Twitter can be happy.
Okay, before we close out this mini episode of the Heat podcast, let's wrap up with Dwyane Wade's Hall of Fame speech. We obviously talked a lot about Wade last week, so we don't want to rehash too much of what we went over, but he gave a pretty good speech on Saturday night.
Yeah, to me, in my opinion, it is all subjective. I thought it was the best speech of the night. I mean, he was the last one to go. 25 minutes it lasted. Very compelling. Like he delivered. Like you could tell. Like he prepared that.
Yeah.
And like
been preparing it for like many times.
Yeah. Like it was really well delivered. Emotional. He had brought his dad on stage. Like
that was obviously the moment. It was like a Kevin Durant, you the real MVP type moment. Basically, that's the comparison that immediately leapt to mind for me.
Yeah, like a lot of these Hall of Fame speeches, like they're memorable, but like nothing really sticks past the next few days. But I think that moment with his dad on stage, like that's something I think we'll see. Like when people talk about Hall of Fame speech, I think we'll see that for years down the road. Like
it'll be like on the ESPYs or whatever.
Yeah, that's just like a memorable moment, a moment that, obviously was touching and one that is going to be brought up. I think so. It was cool. It was cool to see like so many Heat people there. Eric Spoelstra. Bam Adebayo was there. Obviously, Udonis Haslem. A lot of the coaching, some Caron Butler was there. Andy Ellisberg, Pat Riley, even like Shane Battier, Ray Allen, like just a bunch of like different players that from every stage of Wade's career, which was cool. It was even like "Let's Go Heat" chants. So even Heat fans made the trip, which was, people criticize Heat fans, but they made the trip to Springfield to watch that and experience it. So it was just a good night overall. I know some people will say he didn't mention Mickey Harrison, right? He kind of very briefly just touched on Pat Riley and Eric Spoelstra, and it was a storyline after the speech. Like, he really didn't talk about the Heat as much as maybe some expected. But I think what the way Wade used the speech, you kind of see was it was more about him and his story and like how he fell in love with basketball, and he really highlighted his dad. And like, I think his dad, he mentioned this in like one of the interviews before the Hall of Fame, that his dad, he feels like, was a forgotten character in his story. So much is made about his mom, and his mom's kind of overcoming what she went through and being a big part of his life. But his dad took him in when he was a little kid and really raised him. So I think he really wanted to make that a focus of the speech. And I just thought it was really well done.
Yeah. And shout out to Dwyane Wade Sr. for not becoming a meme. Usually like a moment like that becomes a meme. It just became like a moment that people were like celebrating.
Yeah.
It was really, we in the Hall of Fame, dog. Like, that's going to be like an all-time like line. Like, you don't, like you said, you don't remember Hall of Fame speeches very often necessarily. I think the one that springs to mind for me, there was like a LaDainian Tomlinson one that I think they used in like a Nike commercial or something eventually. Like, every once in a while you get one from a really charismatic, really important player. And obviously Dwyane Wade like checks a lot of those boxes. He's like as charismatic a superstar as come along in the NBA, and really like he's in that up. Not just obviously he's one of the greats of all time, but he's got that. There's a reason like TNT wants him on their broadcasts and stuff, right? Like he's got that extra level where he's got like got a sense of humor and got a in touch with his emotions, right? Which not a lot of dudes, not just NBA dudes, just dudes don't have.
Yeah, and I'm impressed he didn't cry. It didn't seem like he cried, at least. And I know that was a goal of his. He didn't want to cry on stage. He wanted to cry after. He told me when I interviewed him. But he got through it. A pretty emotional speech without crying, so kudos to him. Extra points.
All right, I think that about wraps things up for this week. Anthony, have you watched any of Winning Time yet?
I have not, regrettably, and I really want to. I know there's 2 episodes out. I'm probably going to watch.
I've only seen the first one of the new season. I will say, I texted you after the first minute of it, episode 1, because it starts with a flash forward, I think, to 84. Was it the one? It's the one year because the weird thing is the Lakers and Celtics didn't play a lot during that era, even though they were the two powerhouses. Right, they kept missing each other. It's the first time I think they played each other was 84, I want to say. And it starts with a flash forward to that, and Pat Riley getting on the team buses. They're getting pelted with trash basically by the Boston fans, and by now Adrian Brody's got the slick back Pat hair, and he gives a classic Pat speech. No, he doesn't do burn the boats, but it's I don't know if it's a real speech or anything, but it didn't. Episode 1 didn't end up being as much about Pat Riley as I thought based off of that first moment, but it was just a great. It's going to be a good Pat Riley show. Adrian Brody is an Oscar winner, right?
And he really looks like him too.
He looks like really young Pat. That's. I don't know how long that show is going to go for. The guy who plays Magic is really good too, Quincy Isaiah, and actually Devon Nixon, Norm Nixon's son, who plays Norm Nixon.
I didn't know that. I didn't know that was his son.
Yeah, wow. Pretty cool. But that show, if it keeps going, I've said it before, I think Pat Riley's life would make a great documentary or TV show or movie or something. He's been part of so many important NBA stories. I think it could be a really good Pat Riley show as this keeps going. So that's why it's relevant to the Heat beat.
Yeah, and also we always hear about how much Pat dislikes the Celtics, right? And it's kind of a joke between players and whenever they play the Celtics, we know how Pat feels, or But I think this show, it might be exaggerated.
Again, it's exaggerated.
It gives us a good background of how it was back in those days, and maybe why Pat feels the way he does about Boston.
Yeah, I'll say for Heat fans who don't watch the show, and again, I don't think it's it's not like Breaking Bad. It's not the greatest show I've ever watched. Right. But for
it's well done though for the show. It is. It's well done.
Yeah, and for Heat fans who haven't watched it, the Celtics are real villains in it. They really make them villainous, which is fun. If you're a Celtics hater, it's the team that, they talk about the Larry Bird being like the media darling because he's the white guy, and Red
Auerbach being like this villainous coach, like he's like arrogant kind of.
I can't remember who the actor is that plays Red Auerbach, but he's really good too. It's the guy from The Shield, Michael Chiklis. He's really good as Red Auerbach. So they do a good job making them villain. Like if I'm a Celtics fan, I don't know if I'd love the show because of how kind of like
so like slanted in the Lakers favor.
But yeah, if nothing else, if you're a Celtics hater and you are into Pat Riley, I think the show's worth watching. And then obviously if you're an NBA fan, some of it you're going to know, and some of it you're going to be like, this isn't really totally accurate, but
it's fun. It's fun, so that's what matters.
Yeah, we'll check in every once in a while. Is there good Pat moments? Because like I said, I think it's going to turn into the Pat Riley show eventually. Like you don't cast Adrian Brody unless you're like, this is the guy
who's going to become a key
anchor of the show.
Yeah. And I mean, Pat's never spoken about like how he feels about the show.
I would love to know what he thinks.
But I have heard he has not watched it, and I don't think he's a huge fan maybe of it. Like, just because I feel like
the big story this time last year was the Jerry West hated the show,
right?
And they do make Jerry West look like a pretty big asshole. Although I love that performance. Jason
Clarke, season,
the actor's name. He was also in Oppenheimer. I don't know if you've seen Oppenheimer. He plays pretty much Jerry West in Oppenheimer. It's pretty funny.
Really?
Yeah. Like he's not playing Jerry, but it's the same performance essentially.
Not to go too deep into it, but that was one of the like biggest surprises to me of the first season of that show. Was like I didn't know Jerry West was like that. Or if I don't know, maybe he's not like that. Maybe it was just
I think it's a little exaggerated.
But the fact that like they even made him with that personality, like I was shocked. I was like, "What? Jerry West?" Like,
I think it's a little accurate, but it's obviously exaggerated. Yeah. Like he was upset that like the signature scene in like the first or second episode is like he throws the Finals MVP trophy through a window, right? Because he won the Finals MVP, I think, in a losing effort, and he throws the trophy through a window. I think that is not truthful, but
probably wasn't happy though. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But I think he lost more finals, I think, than anyone ever. Like it's, you'd have to be a little agitated with the way your career went. I mean, he's made up for it obviously since by being the architect.
The logo.
He's the logo, and I mean, kind of the architect of the Warriors in a lot of ways.
Sure.
But yeah, worth watching for Heat fans if you're looking for. I know it's not a Heat show, and the Heat don't even exist at that point, but enough things that tie into Heatdom that is, I think, makes it worth watching. All right, I think we can finish there after that longer than expected detour into winning time. You can follow Anthony on Twitter at Anthony_Chang. You can follow me on Twitter at DBWilson2. Check out Anthony's coverage of Dwyane Wade's Hall of Fame induction, schedule stuff if you want some of the stuff we talked about all written out for you. Anything else? It'll quiet down a little bit, I guess, now before camp gets started.
Usually like Labor Day, like right after Labor Day, that week is kind of where things really start to pick up as far as like got more guys going into facilities, like ramping up workouts. Like Labor Day is usually like the unofficial start of the season, for like preparing for the season. Mm-hmm. So we have a couple weeks until then. So yeah, I think for the rest of August it should be quiet.
Yeah,
unless there's a huge trade that some people are waiting for. So we'll see.
Yeah, so we're in a holding pattern as far as this show goes. We'll obviously be back pretty regularly, but if there's no Dame Lillard trade or no other real news, we'll probably take next week off, and then come back in a couple of weeks after that. Again, unless there's a Damian Lillard trade, and then we'll drop everything and talk about it.
Then we'll be talking every day of the week.
Exactly. So, thanks again for listening, and we'll talk to you guys next week.